So there we have it, our four semi-finalists. India taking on Australia at Sydney on the 26th of March. But before that, New Zealand, the co-hosts who've been on a rampage, taking on the quintessential chokers at this stage, South Africa. The four teams that everyone picked before the tournament started have indeed made it to the semis, making a mouth-watering lineup for the semi-finals of the 2015 World Cup. Welcome everyone, you're watching the Cup That Matters and we're into the semi-finals now. I'm Shivani Gupta. To talk about the lineups that we have in front of us, I have Nikhil Chopra and Andrew Simons with me in the studio. Saurav Ganguly, former India captain, is joining us with Boria Majumdar, consulting editor from Sydney. And we also have former England captain Nasir Hussain joining us from Melbourne to set up these clashes for us. The four best teams that everyone picked before the World Cup started have indeed made it to the semi-finals. And what a tournament New Zealand and India have had. Unbeaten in the group stage and again looking like the two best teams in the knockouts as well. But Australia and South Africa have showed their mettle as well. These two sides will be gunning for a spot in the final. But who are we banking on? Is it going to be India against Australia and New Zealand over South Africa and an India-New Zealand final? We'll talk about that and much more. But let's look back to what the action was today. Martin Guptill. Saurav, this is the highest individual score in a World Cup, but would you say the best individual innings as well in a World Cup ever?
Yeah, I think so, because firstly the quality of the attack, secondly the situation, the game. It's a quarter-final, it's a World Cup quarter-final. You know, Chris Gayle got it in against Zimbabwe in a group game. Gary Kirsten got it against United Arab Emirates, which are not the best attack in the world. But it's a World Cup quarter-final, and he's got against West Indies, who I think had probably the most potent attack of all those big knocks in World Cups. And I would say it was a fabulous knock actually. I don't know whether you watched it on TV. I watched it closely. You can say the grounds in New Zealand are not the biggest, but he's actually hit some of them on the roof. He's hit a few deliveries on the roof of the ground, and it's a special knock. It's that quality. He was hitting straight down the ground, and he looked a fabulous player, Martin Guptill. Just 7 one-day hundreds so far though, but I think this is right up there.
Absolutely. Nasir, you agree with that? The greatest World Cup knock ever now?
Well, I'm not so sure. I don't like to disagree with Saurav. He usually gets most things right, but you got Ricky Ponting in 2003 in the final. The 140 was it against India? And
yes, we know all about that.
Yeah, Gilchrist in 2007 when he went out with the squash ball. He wasn't in great nick in that final. It's the best knock in this World Cup, and it's right up there in the top 3 or 4. But I think hundreds in finals that have won you the tournament under immense pressure. You know, it was brilliant from Guptill, really. 3 months ago, he was out of form, not getting many runs, and all eyes today were on the likes of McCullum and Gale. And Guptill played better than he's ever played before, and what a time to do it.
Andrew, how explosive do you think this New Zealand lineup looks now, you know, especially with Guptill coming into form too? I know that Elliott and, you know, Anderson haven't got a lot of runs under their belt, but is there anything that looks like stopping them?
Oh, look, I don't think the execution of the West Indies death bowling was very good at all. They bowled a lot of half volleys. But Guptill's innings, it was such a controlled innings. The West Indies, the way they batted, they were slogging, clearing the front leg, heaving at the ball. Guptill played, you saw in the highlights package there, played a lot of balls straight down the ground, just good conventional cricket shots. And when you get someone who bats for that long, you can get the whole team to bat around him. One of the formulas that the Australian side used to use, if we get one of the top 3 scores 100 and then someone else gets sort of 60, 80 plus, we can usually get ourselves to 300. And that's the way, it's a good formula. That formula works. You build big totals on that. And then your smaller cameos can come in towards the end and you build big totals.
Yeah. Nikhil, it's also the way he batted, isn't it? Like everyone is mentioning, such beautiful shots, great timing, everything that was obviously supposed to be hit, he got those and other good balls as well. And it's also the way he approached his 200, isn't it? One expected maybe he'll become a little more cautious, but not at all. It wasn't the landmark that he was going for.
Absolutely. And I think the important thing is how he paced his innings.
Yeah.
You know, when 2 wickets fell, he had a job to do. Go out there and push the ball in the gaps, you know. Try and spend some time out there on the wicket, but you're absolutely right. Once you got close to a 190, there are a lot of people suggested, and somebody on the air is said that you have enough time, you can just push it in the gaps and try and get that 200. It's a big landmark. And I think it was Hussey there. He says, "You're joking, aren't you? This is the World Cup quarterfinal. You got to go for it." You know, and that's Gaptil for you. And I'm pretty sure anybody else who would have been there batting, the most important thing is what does the team total say? Individual milestones come and go, doesn't make a difference.
Even that 200-run mark he got with a boundary which he was looking to attack again.
At the end of the day, Shivani, you need that win under your belt. Otherwise, that 200 is of no use. If your team doesn't win, what are you going to do with that 200?
Absolutely. Although they were almost certain of a win, even then, you know, it wasn't quite a doubt even at that point. But what it does is, with this brilliant win over West Indies, not only reinforces their status as the top favourites, the Kiwi side, but also now sets up a mouth-watering clash against South Africa. That's going to be in Auckland, again at home. We're going to talk about the home factor when we talk about New Zealand in this World Cup as well, because if they were to get into the final, they'd be playing in Melbourne, and how big a disadvantage would that be for them? But here's the schedule for that matchup. The first semi-final of the 2015 World Cup on 24th of March, New Zealand versus South Africa. Two teams traditionally that don't do well in World Cup knockouts. But here they are, and one of them will get into the final. Let us go back to Sydney once again. Before I talk to Saurabh, Boria, what do you make of this one? Two traditional underachievers in World Cups clashing in the semis.
You know, we were talking in the break, Saurabh and I, and both of us were saying we need a new world champion. I mean, at least you will see a non-winner. Never before winner in the World Cup final. That's not bad at all. I mean, both these teams are quality sides, we know that. But one of these teams will progress to the World Cup final. And Saurav said it can well be South Africa's year. Think about it. South Africa versus India or Australia in Melbourne, and South Africa wins it. The ghost exorcised forever. Or even New Zealand. In a World Cup final at the MCG, New Zealand winning it. However, you know, anything in Kiwi history, it's a fairy tale bigger than anything. On Australian soil, winning the cup at the MCG. So Shivani, mouth-watering clash for sure, on the cusp of history, and that's what I like about sport.
Shivani, I just have one more to add to what Boria said. Just one more thing to add to what Boria says. I'm happy that he's saying that we need a world champion, maybe New Zealand or South Africa. My only condition which I put to Boria is that if India qualifies to the final, then we don't need a new world champion. If India doesn't qualify, then we might have a new world champion. So that's a precondition to what he's saying.
But Saurabh, on paper, on form, with the bowling attack like the one they have, does any team look like stopping New Zealand? Or do you think the fact that they've played largely in New Zealand could work against them later?
See, they'll only play the final in Australia. They'll play the semi-finals in New Zealand. But as you said at the start of the show, the four most deserving teams have qualified for the semi-finals, and any one of them can beat each other. You know, nobody is ahead of each other once the semi-final starts. India, Australia, South Africa, New Zealand. And why I'm happy is because the four best teams have made it to the semi-finals, and it's the right contest, because maybe throughout this World Cup we've seen a lot more one-sided contest, and I think this semi-final will probably stop that. And by saying that, I also believe that any one of these four can win the World Cup. There are no favourites, no one is ahead of the other, and I say that Australia, India at Sydney, it may be Sydney, Australia's home ground, but it's 50-50. Neither India is ahead, neither Australia is ahead, and I say the same thing with South Africa. I had a gut feeling before the World Cup, and Andrew Symonds will not agree with me, that this could be something special for South Africa, and I still stick to it. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know whether they'll win it or whether they'll lose it in the semi-finals or they lose it in the finals. But you know, you have gut feelings about certain teams, and probably I have a gut feeling about South Africa, because they've been such a good side for such a long period without winning anything. Maybe it could be their time.
Right, Andrew, I'll come to you for a reaction, but let me go across to Nasser. Nasser, I remember you said that maybe, you know, South Africa is always very good in the group stages, then they stumble in the knockouts. This time, the progression has been different for them. This battle between New Zealand and South Africa, it's all in the mind, would you say?
Yeah, because of what you said earlier about them losing so many semi-finals between them. I mean, they lost that famous one at Edgbaston when Donald dropped his bat against Australia, and New Zealand always get to semi-finals. But there's a slight difference with New Zealand as well. New Zealand have always overachieved, and everyone thought, well, how have they got there? And then they lose. This time, it's the other way around. Everyone is expecting them to get through to the semi-final and possibly get through with the home advantage, get through to a final. So it's a different kind of pressure for both these sides. But you're right. I mean, I like the way South Africa had a couple of stumbles on their way. They stumble against Pakistan in particular. I think got AB de Villiers really cross. The press he did after that loss, he got very cross with his team. Very rarely in a tournament does a captain in front of the media have a go at his batting lineup or his team. But AB de Villiers basically said after that Pakistan run chase, that was not good enough and we'll have to get better. And they seem to have got better since that game. I believe in home advantage, but having seen India play the other day at the MCG, I agree completely with Saurav. That semi-final in Sydney is just far too close to call.
We'll talk more about India, Australia in just a bit, but continuing about New Zealand, Andrew, it's quite unique. You know, when I was in New Zealand as well, I noticed how New Zealanders wear the underdogs tag very well. You know, they've been underdogs throughout. How do you think they're going to adapt to being favourites? Is that something that's going to take some time for them to adapt to?
The thing that Australia found with New Zealand is we've got that arch rival type thing going on there. And what they did, as Nasser said, that they've been sort of underachievers, underdogs, but they've always been very competitive. But now what they've got some real quality in this side now to go with that competitive nature that they have. And as was said, you know, playing in their home country, they've got quite a hostile crowd there too that can really hop into the opposition.
I noticed that the belief was flowing amongst the fans as well. You know, everybody was now backing this New Zealand side.
Absolutely. New Zealand will be buzzing as a country at the moment, you know, with the thought of what could possibly be in front of them. You know, they're the smallest country out of all of them, and rugby's the #1 sport there. And
they won the Rugby World Cup recently. They're looking for this Cricket World Cup now.
That's what I'm coming to. And then so there's a real feel that New Zealand can win World Cups in all types of sport over there. So, you know, it'd be an exciting place and exciting to be a Kiwi at the moment, definitely.
Saurav, I remember I was speaking to Stephen Fleming earlier, and he said that this is a better New Zealand side than even the ones that he was part of, because those sides might have felt that they could win a World Cup. This side believes they can win the World Cup, and that makes all the difference.
Yeah, maybe Shivani. Yes, the firepower in this side is a lot better than some of the previous New Zealand sides. You know, when you look at Brendan McCullum, the way he's played, Kane Williamson, who I think is a class player, Corey Anderson down the order. But I also feel that, you know, looking at this World Cup, and with due respect to everyone, there are 4 or 5 very strong teams in world cricket at the moment. Maybe when Stephen Fleming played, when Nasser Hussain played, when Andrew Simons played, Pakistan were brilliant, West Indies were brilliant, England were a good side, England were competitive in one-day cricket, and there were a lot of good teams around. But this World Cup has really disappointed me. You know, when you really looked at the quality, the four best teams have qualified to the semis, and the difference between those 4 and the rest is a lot, which was not the case previously. So there was a lot more competition. There was a lot more bigger teams who could beat you on that particular day. You know, you asked all of us on your show tonight that did we believe that Australia would lose to Pakistan? Did we believe that West Indies would lose to New Zealand? But we did that in the past. That West Indies team, that Pakistan team could beat any team. They've beaten Australia in the past. So I'm not surprised with the performances. I'm not surprised with New Zealand getting into the semis. New Zealand have got into the semis in the past also. But can they get to the finals? Can they win it? We'll have to wait and see.
Let's listen into what Stephen Fleming actually told me earlier when talking about the way the New Zealand side is shaping up.
Well, they've got a great chance. It is their time. They've been playing great cricket, unbeaten so far, like India. And the form that they had going into the World Cup, they've carried on. People were unsure how they would go. They started well, great game against Australia. And now there's a real hope. There's a real optimism about how far this team can go. They look different to other teams, certainly that I've been involved in. There is a belief there. And I think that would come from having each player perform at a world-class level. The seam bowlers are going well. They're aggressively led by Brennan. The batsmen look good. And I think they've got real belief within the camp, which is now starting to flow out into the general public. And I'm excited. It doesn't guarantee that they'll win, but they'll be competitive. And that's all we ask. We've got the Rugby World Cup, and I think people dream if we get the 2, it would be a wonderful year.
Will it be a wonderful year for New Zealand? We'll have to wait and see. Quick predictions for this one from everyone who's willing to, put their neck on the line. Nikhil and Andrew, I'll start with you two first.
With the South Africa, New Zealand?
Yeah.
Somehow, I'd go with South Africa.
South Africa.
I'm going with New Zealand.
You don't want South Africa to win?
I don't want South Africa to win anything.
Nasir, how about you?
Oh, crikey. New Zealand just on home advantage, that's all.
And Saurav and Boria?
South Africa, because they deserve it more than any other team.
Oh, come on.
Oh, I wonder if we agree with that. But Saurav?
I knew Andrew would say that. I knew Andrew would say that.
Actually, I'm honest and I mean it. I'm not putting any of the semi-finalists ahead of the other. All the four I mean. And to Andrew Simons, if I meet A.B. de Villiers, I'll ask him to get you a South African passport. You desperately need one.
All right, we're going to slip into a very short break. On the other side, of course, the one that Indians are waiting for, India versus Australia. They didn't win a match against them all summer. Can they get one this time? And this will be the one that matters. We'll be back
on 26th March will prove to be India's toughest test in the tournament.
India have to be careful. Not many sides go to Australia and win in any form of the game. You look at Australia's record at home, white ball, red ball cricket, they are phenomenal. So it will be their toughest game so far. But from the way they are playing, they are ready for Australia.
At Sydney, Australia boast of a better head-to-head record, winning 12 of the 14 matches played between the two sides. And their recent thrashing of India in the Tri-Series will also give Clark's side a psychological edge. But Dhoni's men have looked a different team altogether in the World Cup, and Dhoni too will look to outdo his Australian counterpart in Sydney.
Well, Dhoni in one-day cricket, Clark in test match cricket, but you can't beat Dhoni I think even Michael Clark would admit.
Come 26th March, it will be a final before the mega final. Sports Bureau headlines today.
No prizes for guessing whom I'm going to first. The only Australian we have on our panel. Andrew, what do you make of this one?
Oh, look, delicious prospect this one, isn't it?
Yeah, for whom?
Well, for a cricket viewer. Because the teams are so evenly balanced.
Yeah.
I'm hoping it's a real close game. Obviously, I'd like Australia to win, but this competition now deserves a really close, quality game of cricket, and I'm hoping these two teams can give it to us. Australia's strengths, Mitchell Starc with the new ball. India are going to have to be beware of him in the first sort of 5 overs he bowls, not to lose wickets, but obviously we'll be looking to take as many as possible. And then I think if India bat well early on and got wickets in hand to attack through the middle period, they'll be able to get at our 5th and 6th bowler. Maxwell's a part-time bowler. That'll give India a chance to really attack him and then launch into those last 15 overs.
So India's batting versus Australia's bowling, isn't it?
So yeah, and then Australia, the way Australia I would perceive is to attack India is that we need the same thing. We need to watch Shami swinging the ball early on, and then so we can put ourselves in a position to attack Jadeja in the middle period and then launch at India at the end. The one last thing that I want to add is fielding is so important. We've seen that in these previous 2 quarterfinals. You can't afford to drop catches.
Absolutely, and these two are very good fielding sides. Both sides have shown that. Nasir, very quickly, which side has shown more X factor for you so far in the World Cup?
Oh, good question. I mean, India are unrecognisable from the side that we saw in Test match cricket in England and was in Tri-Series out in here in Australia. Unrecognisable. When I turned up at the MCG the other day, they had so much spark, so much energy. They've been on the road for so long. Their batting, their bowling, their fielding, their togetherness, their team spirit, Dhoni, throughout the side has made them look a completely different team. So if Australia expect the same old India to turn up, they will be very, very surprised. And I'm sure Michael Clark, he's already said, no, this is a different India. I think the key for India is the short ball. It's worked against all the other sides. Will it work against Australia? Pakistan bowled it well the other night. So can India do the same?
All right, Saurav, last 15 seconds left. Quickly, would you pick a team in this one?
No, I won't. I think 50-50. And both have equal chance of winning this World Cup. or rather winning this game, and I think toss will be very, very crucial. I completely agree with Nas. This is a very important, this is a very different Indian side, I beg your pardon, what we saw in the test matches and in the tri-series. My only worry with India, that leading to the World Cup semi-final, they haven't been challenged enough. They haven't played some very competitive teams. Zimbabwe, Ireland, Bangladesh and the West Indies, their last 4 games. I know you play what you get, but I would have rather have a big game with them, fight hard and then play Australia in the semis. But that doesn't take anything away from India. Both of them go with equal chances of winning this game.
Safe to say these are two of the best semi-final lineups that we could have had. So as Andrew said, for the fans, it's a very, very good opportunity to watch 4 good sides go at each other. Andrew, Nikhil, Saurav, Boria, Nasir, thanks a lot for joining us. Of course, as we build up to the semi-finals, we'll keep taking more views from our experts. That's all the time we have now. Goodbye.